Black nurse forced her to marry a sterile, wealthy sow. But after one night, he became obsessed with her. Her nursing training screamed warning signals. People who offered too much too fast usually wanted something questionable in return. Have you ever faced a moment where all paths forward seemed wrong? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The letter arrived on the same day Amara's nursing license was suspended, a pristine envelope offering salvation in exchange for her freedom. She stared at the official notice sitting on her rickety kitchen table. False accusations of malpractice had ended her career in one cruel swoop. 5 years of night shifts, patient care, and sacrifices gone. Her trembling fingers traced the Georgia State Nursing Board seal as reality crashed down. Without her license, her work visa would expire in 30 days. Final notice. Rent due, screamed the second letter, its red stamp a blaring alarm. 3 months behind already. The air in her small Atlanta apartment felt thick, suffocating. Her phone buzzed. The immigration attorney she couldn't afford. Miss Adeyemi, without employment, there's nothing I can do. You'll need to prepare to return to Nigeria by next month. Tears threatened, but Amara blinked them back. Crying wouldn't pay bills or restore her reputation. She'd left Lagos with dreams of sending money home to her grandmother who'd raised her. Now she'd return in disgrace with nothing. That's when she noticed the third envelope. Heavy cream paper, her name in elegant script. Inside, a business card from Maxwell Thompson, attorney at law, Silicon Valley, California. A handwritten note read, "A solution to your current situation awaits. Discretion required. $50,000 retainer enclosed as good faith." The check inside was real. She called the bank to verify. The phone number on the card connected to a woman with a voice like polished marble. "Mr. Thompson's office. I understand you received our correspondence. What exactly is this about?" Amara asked, suspicion battling desperation. "Mr. Thompson represents a client requiring immediate assistance of a personal nature. Your background makes you an ideal candidate. A private jet awaits you at Hartsfield-Jackson tomorrow morning. All will be explained upon arrival." Amara glanced around her apartment. Medical textbooks she'd sacrificed meals to afford, photos of the grandmother who believed in her, bills she couldn't pay. And if I decline, the retainer would need to be returned. We'd find another candidate. Another candidate, like she was applying for a job. But what job paid this kind of money up front? Her nursing training screamed warning signals. People who offered too much too fast usually wanted something questionable in return. As darkness fell, Amara sat by her window, watching Atlanta's lights blur through unshed tears. The choice felt impossible. Trust strangers offering suspicious salvation or lose everything she'd worked for. Have you ever faced a moment where all paths forward seemed wrong? Would you risk trusting someone unknown when everything familiar was crumbling? Drop a comment if you've ever had to choose between bad options and worse ones. As her trembling fingers dialed the number on the letter, Amara had no idea the man waiting on the other end wouldn't just offer her financial salvation. He would demand her entire existence. Preston Whitmore didn't speak so much as pronounce judgment, each word carrying the weight of his billions and the chill of a man who had never needed to ask twice. Amara sat perfectly still in the sleek law office, 37 floors above San Francisco Bay. After a 5-hour flight on a private jet and a silent car ride in a Rolls-Royce, she found herself facing the notorious tech CEO whose face graced magazine covers and business channels. In person, he was taller, leaner, his features sharper than photographs captured, all angles and cold precision. "The terms are straightforward," he said, not bothering with introductions. "Marriage, 1 year minimum, possibly longer depending on inheritance stipulations. You maintain absolute discretion about our arrangement. In return, your financial and immigration concerns disappear." His attorney, Thompson, slid a contract across the polished table. The figure on the payment page made Amara's breath catch. "Why me?" she managed, finding her voice. "Your credentials meet specific requirements," Preston answered, never looking directly at her. Nursing license, currently suspended but retrievable. Immigration status, precarious enough to ensure compliance. No family in the United States. No romantic entanglements. He recited her life like a shopping list, each item checked off with clinical detachment. You've been investigating me. Not a question. Do it, diligence. His eyes, gray as winter rain, finally met hers. There's something else you should understand. I don't like being touched. By anyone. Ever. That will not change regardless of our legal status. The attorney cleared his throat. Mr. Whitmore requires a wife immediately to satisfy an inheritance clause left by his late mentor. The marriage must appear legitimate to outside scrutiny. Separate accommodations will be arranged. Preston stood abruptly, moving to the window. My personal space is non-negotiable. Your comfort is irrelevant to our arrangement. His words should have offended her. Instead, something in his rigid posture suggested this wasn't arrogance but armor. When his hand accidentally brushed hers during the contract signing, his entire body flinched like he'd been burned. Yet for a heartbeat after, his eyes locked on hers with an intensity that seemed to surprise him. Would you marry someone who couldn't bear your touch if it meant financial security and solving your problems overnight? What price would you put on intimacy? Drop your thoughts below. I'm curious what you'd do in Amara's shoes. One more question, she said as she signed the final page. Why me specifically? There must be thousands of women with immigration issues who'd jump at this offer. Something flickered behind his eyes, something that made her wonder if the contract in her hands contained even half of what this man was hiding. You were highly recommended, he replied after a pause too long to be natural. The car will take you to the airfield. Pack essentials only. We leave for Aspen in 3 hours. The marriage license fell heavier than the 3-carat diamond. He slid on her finger without meeting her eyes. 24 hours after signing the contract, Amara stood in a private Aspen lodge beside Preston Whitmore, repeating vows that meant nothing to either of them. The justice of the peace, clearly accustomed to rush ceremonies for the wealthy, asked no questions about their whirlwind romance. The two stone-faced men Preston introduced as security served as witnesses. Snow fell outside, mountain peaks disappearing into white clouds. Inside, the lodge sprawled with rustic luxury, hand-hewn beams, stone fireplaces, floor-to-ceiling windows. Their wedding dinner consisted of Preston taking business calls in his office, while Amara ate alone at a dining table that could seat 20. A woman named Vera appeared, introducing herself as the household manager. I'll show you to your suite, Mrs. Whitmore. Mrs. Whitmore. The name felt like clothing that didn't fit. Her suite was larger than her entire Atlanta apartment, decorated in cream and gold, with a bathroom featuring a tub big enough to swim in. Through a connecting door, she glimpsed Preston's room. Identical layout, but in steel blue and gray. Mr. Whitmore requires absolute privacy, Vera explained, closing the connecting door. He works unusual hours. You may hear him at night. That night, Amara stood at her window watching moonlight transform the snow into diamonds. This isn't a marriage, she whispered to her reflection. It's a transaction with a man who can't even look at me during dinner. Sleep came fitfully. Around 3 a.m., she heard the shower running through the shared bathroom wall. Despite herself, she listened to the water patter, imagining this stranger who was now legally her husband. His silhouette visible through frosted glass, water streaming down his body. The heat that rushed through her was unexpected and unwelcome. Her phone buzzed with a news alert that made her blood freeze. The headline mentioned Preston's mentor, tech legend Walter Kimball, his recent death, and a controversial inheritance timeline. But it was the next line that stopped her breath. Whitmore marries immigrant nurse, 5th bride candidate in 3 months. The article featured her employment photo from Atlanta Memorial Hospital. 5th bride candidate? Had 4 women before her refused this arrangement? Or something worse? Have you ever found yourself curious about someone who seemed completely closed off? What draws us to ice when we know it will burn? Share your experience below if you've ever been intrigued by someone who pushed you away. Morning brought fresh snow and Preston in a tailored suit, issuing instructions like a general before battle. We leave for California in 1 hour. The inheritance board requires photographs of the ceremony. Thompson has arranged appropriate documentation. He placed a folder on the table without looking at her. Your new identification, credit cards, and background information you should memorize. His wedding ring gleamed on his left hand, matching the one weighing down hers. Any questions? He asked, already turning away. 1,000, but only one mattered. Who were the women before me? His shoulders tensed beneath expensive wool. Irrelevant. They're no longer candidates. His mansion breathed technology, but suffocated humanity. Until the night, she found him sleeping with her nursing textbook open on his chest. The Silicon Valley estate loomed against the California sky, glass and steel reflecting clouds like a structure that existed half in this world and half in another. Amara had expected luxury. What she hadn't expected was emptiness. Rooms designed for people that never arrived, spaces meant for living that served only as showcases. Voice activation controls everything, Preston explained during a brisk tour. Lights, temperature, security, privacy glass. Say what you need, the house responds. Like a marriage to a stranger, she murmured. His eyes flicked to her face, something almost like surprise registering before the mask returned. Her wing of the house included a bedroom suite, sitting room, and private office equipped with more technology than most hospitals. His quarters remained off-limits, marked by doors that required his specific voice pattern. You'll accompany me to the Kimball Foundation Gala tomorrow night, he informed her over breakfast the next morning. The first words he'd spoken since their arrival. First public appearance. My stylist will provide appropriate attire. The appropriate attire turned out to be a midnight blue gown that transformed her. Looking in a mirror, Amara barely recognized herself. Elegant stranger replacing the exhausted nurse who'd signed away her freedom. At the gala, Preston played his role flawlessly. Hand hovering near the small of her back without touching, finishing her sentences with practiced intimacy, presenting her to Silicon Valley's elite as my wife, the brilliant medical professional I've been searching for. Tech billionaires and venture capitalists circled them like sharks, eyes assessing the unlikely match. Amara felt their judgment. What was she doing with him? What was he doing with her? Walking past the pool on their return, she caught him watching as her dress rippled against her body. His gaze wasn't clinical this time. It burned with something that vanished the moment she turned. When was the last time someone looked at you like they were seeing something no one else could? That moment when curiosity becomes something more dangerous? I want to hear your stories of unexpected attraction in the comments. 3 weeks into their arrangement, Amara discovered Preston's private library while exploring the East Wing. Ancient first editions shared space with medical journals. A worn copy of Gray's Anatomy caught her eye, her favorite textbook from nursing school. Returning after midnight, she found him there, asleep on the leather sofa, her borrowed textbook open on his chest, pages marked with notes in his precise handwriting. Questions about neurotransmitters, research on touch aversion therapy, clinical studies on PTSD. He was researching his own condition. His breathing changed as she moved to leave, eyes opening, body tensing. I didn't mean to disturb you, she said. You didn't. A pause. You have excellent marginal notes on the parasympathetic nervous system. Before she could respond, his phone rang, a specialized tone that straightened his posture instantly. 3 words, then his face went pale. The panic attack hit him without warning, his breathing ragged, eyes wild with fear. Before his security could move, Amara was already beside him, her nursing training taking over. Don't touch me, he gasped, even as his trembling hand clutched hers like salvation. She became his wife to save herself, but now found herself trying to save him from demons he refused to name. The panic attack revealed cracks in Preston's carefully constructed facade. As her nursing instincts kicked in, Amara guided him through breathing techniques without physical contact. Only when his security team approached did he allow her to help him to his private quarters, a clinical space more laboratory than bedroom. This happens often? She asked, professional tone masking concern. Irrelevant. His voice regained its edge, though his hands still trembled. Not to me. Not if we're sharing living space. Something shifted in his expression, surprised that someone would challenge him, perhaps. Sleep disturbance. Occasional anxiety episodes. Nothing requiring intervention. The dark circles under his eyes told a different story. That night began their strange new routine. She would leave medical journals with specific passages marked. He would return them with questions in the margins. A conversation without words, without touch. 3 nights later, she found him at 3 a.m. in his office, surrounded by holographic displays showing code sequences she couldn't understand. Moonlight cut across his features, highlighting exhaustion etched into every line. "You haven't slept in 36 hours, she observed from the doorway. 42, actually." He didn't look up. The Kimball Inheritance Board requires project demonstrations by Friday. Your body will crash before then. His fingers paused over the keyboard. Medical opinion? Professional assessment. For the first time, he smiled, just a slight upward tilt of his mouth. Noted, she established a healthcare routine, regular meals, scheduled rest periods, medication for sleep disruption, progress charts tracking his stress indicators. Her nursing license might be suspended, but her knowledge remained intact. Gradually, he shared fragments of his background. Foster care after his parents died. Scholarship to MIT at 16. First software company at 19. The Kimball mentorship that changed everything. In turn, she told him about Nigeria, her grandmother's sacrifices, the nursing scholarship, her dreams of opening a clinic back home someday. One evening, while reviewing his vitals, her fingers accidentally brushed his wrist. Instead of flinching away completely, he froze, tension vibrating through him, but not immediate withdrawal. Progress. What happens when professional boundaries start blurring with personal attraction? Have you ever found connection in the most unexpected circumstances? Comment below if you've experienced that shift from clinical to something more complicated. The tablet arrived the next morning. A sleek device Preston explained would monitor his health metrics. More efficient than manual checks. While setting up the software, medical files transferred automatically. One diagnosis stood out: post-traumatic aversion response due to childhood touch-associated trauma. Her finger hovered over the file, professional curiosity wrestling with ethical boundaries. Before she could decide, a second file appeared. Candidate requirements, medical training, immigration vulnerability, no family connections. Realization washed over her cold as winter rain. Every coincidence that brought her here, the malpractice accusation, the visa issues, the timely offer, none were random. She was never random. She was selected. For what exactly? She still didn't know. But the precision of her selection suggested something beyond a simple marriage of convenience. Something calculated with the same cold precision as everything else in Preston Whitmore's life. The first time Preston Whitmore allowed her to touch him without flinching, Amara understood the true meaning of power, and it had nothing to do with his billions. After discovering his medical files, Amara faced a choice: confront him about his deception or use her knowledge to help him. The nurse in her won. If he had selected her for medical skills, she would demonstrate exactly what those skills could do. "I want to propose a treatment plan," she announced at breakfast, sliding a printed protocol across the table. "For your touch aversion." His coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. "That's not part of our arrangement. Our arrangement includes maintaining appearances. The Inheritance Board is watching. Last week you jumped when Senator Mitchell's wife touched your arm. People notice." His jaw tightened. "It's not treatable. That's incorrect. Systematic desensitization therapy has shown significant success rates." A week passed before he responded, leaving a note in her medical journal. Protocol accepted. Terms to be established. The Inheritance Board complicated matters, requesting private interviews with both of them. "They're questioning the authenticity of our relationship," Preston explained, tension radiating from his rigid posture. Walter Kimball was protective of his legacy. The marriage clause ensures his company doesn't fall to someone who views it merely as assets to liquidate. Therapy sessions began in his private gym, neutral territory, progress measured in seconds and centimeters. First through fabric, her hand on his sleeve. 5 seconds. 10. His breathing controlled through sheer will. The pathways in your brain connecting touch with danger can be rewired, she explained, professional tone masking her awareness of his cologne. Small exposures build new associations. By the 3rd week, they'd progressed to skin contact, her fingertips on his forearm, the inside of his wrist where his pulse jumped beneath her touch. Start with 5 seconds, she instructed, professional voice belying her racing pulse. His inhale was sharp when her fingertips touched his forearm, but he didn't pull away. By the 10th second, something shifted in his eyes, fear giving way to something equally frightening, want. Between sessions, they established routines that felt dangerously domestic. Morning coffee, shared meals when his schedule allowed, her accompanying him to business functions, learning to anticipate his needs in crowded rooms. His body gradually adapted to her proximity, a hand near her back in public, shoulders brushing while reviewing documents. Small victories that shouldn't have felt significant, but somehow were. Why fight so hard against human contact? She asked during their 6th session. Minutes passed before he answered. Control. When no one touches you, no one can hurt you. The simple truth in his words resonated deeper than she wanted to admit. Have you ever experienced the power of being someone's exception? That moment when barriers created for everyone else come down just for you? Share your story of breakthrough below. Their progress continued until the night she needed reference materials from his study. The door was unlocked, unusual for Preston's private spaces. She entered without knocking, expecting emptiness. The screens went dark instantly, but not before she glimpsed multiple windows, her daily schedule, her location tracking, and most disturbing, surveillance footage of her bedroom. Ice flooded her veins as their eyes met across the darkened room. Not fear in his expression, shame, and something worse, desperation. I can explain, he said, voice stripped of its usual control. But some violations needed no explanation. She confronted him with fire in her veins, but the look in his eyes wasn't guilt. It was naked terror of losing what he'd never meant to find. You've been watching me? Amara's voice cut through the study's darkness. Recording me? In my bedroom. Preston remained behind his desk, fingers pressed against polished wood like it might anchor him. It's not what you think. Really? Because I think it's exactly what it looks like. You violating my privacy. Tracking me like I'm property. Security protocols. Don't. Her hand slashed through air. Don't hide behind technical terms. You've been spying on me. Rain began outside, pattering against glass walls. Thunder rumbled in the distance, matching the storm building between them. I track everyone in this house, he said finally. Every employee, every visitor, every contractor. The clinical term for their relationship sliced deeper than expected. Our contract specified privacy, or does that only apply to you? You can't bear being touched, but watching me undress is acceptable. He stood so abruptly his chair crashed backward. I don't watch you changing. Genuine horror crossed his face. The bedroom feeds are thermal only, heat signatures to confirm presence, not visual surveillance. And that makes it better? Lightning flashed, illuminating his face, features stripped of their usual mask. You tracked my movements today. You knew exactly where I was when I went running, how long I spent in the library. Yes. What? The single word hung between them. Rain intensified, drumming against the roof like impatient fingers. Preston moved to the window, back to her, shoulders rigid. Because I need to know you're safe. I'm not a child. No, you're. His reflection in the glass showed something she'd never seen. Uncertainty. The others weren't safe. Cold trickled down her spine. What others? The women before you. His voice dropped. The other candidates. Amara crossed the room, forcing him to face her. What happened to them? Thunder crashed as he stepped closer, voice dropping to a whisper. The last woman who lived here disappeared without a trace. The one before her was found dead. I'm not tracking you because I don't trust you, Amara. I'm terrified you'll be next. What would you do if someone crossed your boundaries but showed genuine remorse? Is invasion of privacy ever forgivable? Tell me where you draw the line. The confession fractured her anger, leaving confusion in its wake. You think I'm in danger? From what? I don't know. Frustration edged his words. After Walter died, after the inheritance terms were revealed, strange things started happening. System breaches, threats. The first candidate, Melissa, had a car accident that investigators called suspicious. The second disappeared from a secured building. And you didn't think to mention this before I signed the contract? Would you have agreed if I had? The truth in his question silenced her momentarily. I want the surveillance disabled, she said finally. At least in my private spaces. I can't protect you without. You don't need to protect me. I never asked for that. His hand lifted, hovering near her face without touching. It's not about what you asked for. It's about what I couldn't bear to lose. The admission hung between them, too honest to dismiss, too complicated to accept. Her phone rang, her mother's doctor with news that couldn't wait. But the look in his eyes promised this conversation wasn't over. The women before her weren't his wives. They were test subjects in a game where Preston wasn't the predator, but potentially another victim. The phone call shattered their standoff. Her mother's doctor needed immediate approval for a specialized treatment. While Amara handled the medical emergency, Preston vanished into his private wing. Hours later, he appeared at her door. Come with me. She followed him to an elevator hidden behind a bookcase in the library. Something straight from movie. They descended deeper than seemed possible, emerging into a room humming with servers and blue light. My secure data center, he explained, voice echoing slightly. Off-grid, isolated from main systems. Screens activated as they approached, displaying information that made Amara's stomach tighten. 5 women's profiles, professional backgrounds, immigration status, medical training, herself, and 4 others. After Walter's death, the inheritance terms required immediate marriage to someone who could potentially assist with his medical research continuation. These women met criteria. Preston pulled up timelines, incident reports, surveillance footage. Melissa Chun, car brakes failed after meeting with Kimball's attorneys. Rebecca Okafor, disappeared from secured apartment building. Fatima Ahmad, food poisoning with compounds not found in standard toxicology. Diana Wilson, still missing. Photos of accomplished women, a biochemist, 2 nurses, a medical researcher, all with immigration complications, all vulnerable in specific ways. You think someone's targeting them? What? Possibly to prevent the inheritance conditions from being met. Possibly to gain control of Walter's research. His breakthrough medical technologies would be worth billions. Amara studied the pattern. They all look like me. Preston nodded. Similar physical type. Similar backgrounds. So I'm bait. His head snapped up. No, you're. He searched for words. Protected. As my wife, you have security measures the others didn't. Except someone got to them despite your precious security. Yes. The admission seemed physically painful. That's why the surveillance. Why track your movements? Why limit your public appearances? The room's cold seeped into her bones. These women had died or disappeared simply for being chosen, for being like her. Why keep this from me? I deserve to know I was in danger. Because you would have left. Raw honesty in his voice. And I couldn't. He stopped abruptly. Couldn't what? Couldn't risk losing you too. Would you stay in a dangerous situation if leaving meant abandoning someone who might need protection? What's the line between self-preservation and loyalty? Share your thoughts below. Before she could process his admission, her phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Adeyemi? This is Special Agent Daniels with the FBI. We've been investigating Preston Whitmore regarding the disappearance of several women. We know about your arrangement. Your nursing license could be reinstated immediately on one condition. Testify about Preston's business practices in our ongoing federal investigation. Blood rushed in her ears as the agent continued. He's under surveillance for criminal activity. Help us, and you'll get your life back. Everything you had before him. Amara's eyes met Preston's across the secure room. The man who'd violated her privacy, who'd kept her in the dark about danger, who'd just admitted he couldn't bear to lose her. The agent's final words hung in the air between them. Think about it, Ms. Adeyemi. Is he protecting you or controlling you? She had dreamed of freedom since signing their contract, but now freedom meant betrayal, and betrayal meant watching a man who couldn't bear to be touched face his nightmares alone. The FBI wanted weekly meetings, information about Preston's business dealings, access to his private files. In exchange, immediate reinstatement of her nursing license, expedited permanent residency, and complete immunity. Amara agreed to listen, nothing more. Agent Daniels met her at a coffee shop downtown, while Preston attended board meetings. Whitmore's company has developed advanced medical technology that violates ethical protocols. The women who disappeared were part of his testing program. That's not true, Amara countered. They were marriage candidates. That's what he told you. Daniels slid photos across the table, security footage of Preston with each woman. None lasted more than 2 weeks in his house. None were seen again. Doubt crept in despite her resistance. She'd seen only what Preston wanted her to see. Back at the mansion, she watched him differently. His careful distance, his controlled movements, the way his eyes followed her when he thought she wasn't looking. Predator or protector? The federal building's interrogation room felt colder than Preston's home had ever been. Steel and concrete without pretense. Just like the choice before her. Self-preservation or protection of a man who might not deserve either. He has panic attacks, she told Agent Daniels during their second meeting. Touch aversion, sleep disturbance, classic PTSD symptoms, or classic manipulation tactics, creating sympathy, making you his caretaker so you overlook red flags. She thought of Preston's face during therapy sessions. Raw vulnerability no one could fake. At home, their strange intimacy deepened. The therapy sessions continued, progress measured in moments. His hand resting near hers at dinner, his breathing steady when she checked his pulse. One night, working late in the library, they reached for the same journal. Fingers brushed, neither pulled away. "I need to try something," she whispered, heart thundering as she slowly placed her palm against his chest. His breath caught, body rigid with restraint, but he nodded once. "I trust you," he said, words that cost him more than any amount in their contract. Have you ever been caught between loyalty and self-preservation? When doing what's right for you means hurting someone who's begun to matter. Let me know if you face this impossible choice. The FBI presented their evidence during her 4th visit. Financial records in Preston's handwriting. Wire transfers to offshore accounts linked to disappeared women. And most damning, a file with her name, medical history, and the note final candidate for Phase 2. Phase 2 of what? She demanded. That's what we need you to find out, Daniels replied. Access his secure servers. We believe he's developing something called neural interface protocol. The previous women were test subjects. Doubt and fear twisted together as she returned home, mind racing with contradictions. The man who flinched at accidental touches didn't match the calculated killer the FBI described. That night, unable to sleep, she found Preston in his lab, reviewing brain scans on multiple screens. Couldn't sleep? He asked without turning. Nightmares. He nodded as if unsurprised. Me too. Preston. Her voice caught. What's neural interface protocol? His body went completely still. When he turned, his eyes held something she hadn't seen before. Resignation. Where did you hear that term? The truth balanced on her tongue like poison. Whatever she said next would change everything between them. I found in your files, she lied, watching his expression for any hint of the monster the FBI claimed he was. The man who couldn't bear her touch had somehow touched every aspect of her life long before they'd ever met, including the malpractice case that destroyed her career. Preston's face drained of color at her question about neural interface protocol. Without speaking, he activated a wall panel, revealing a hidden medical laboratory that made her nursing experience seem primitive by comparison. Walter Kimball's final project, he explained, voice hollow. direct neural communication between damaged nervous systems and external processors. A way to repair neural pathways affected by trauma. Brain scans floated on transparent screens, before and after images showing dramatic changes in neural activity. These are your scans, she realized. You're not just researching touch aversion. You're trying to cure it. Yes. The admission seemed to cost him. Walter developed the initial protocol before his death. The inheritance requires a continuation of his work. And the other women? Were they test subjects? His head snapped up. No, they were potential partners who might understand the medical implications, who could administer treatments when necessary. The pieces began shifting, forming a different picture than the FBI had painted. Yet something still didn't fit. The malpractice accusation against me. The timing of your offer when I was most vulnerable. That wasn't coincidence. Silicon Valley spread below his office windows, a kingdom built on invisible connections and hidden algorithms. Exactly like the web he'd woven around her life, calculating her destruction and salvation with equal precision. No, his voice dropped to nearly inaudible. It wasn't. The confirmation landed like a physical blow. You destroyed my career to make me desperate enough to accept your offer. I needed someone specific, he admitted, voice hollow. Someone with medical training who wouldn't ask questions. Someone who could administer the treatments when the time came. Someone with everything to lose. Rage burned through her, hot and clarifying. You ruined my life for your convenience. I saved your career. His calm shattered. The real malpractice investigation was already underway before I intervened. Patient died under your care last February. Blood thinners administered despite contraindications. Memory flashed, Mr. Rodriguez. Cardiac complications. Not our patient. She'd only covered one shift. You didn't check the previous nurse's notes. The investigation would have found you negligent. Your license permanently revoked. Instead, I had my team create a different case. One that could be dismissed once certain conditions were met. The floor seemed to tilt beneath her. You set me up to fall just so you could catch me. I identified a candidate who matched necessary criteria and created a path of least resistance. What would hurt more? Discovering someone manipulated your downfall, or realizing they might have done it for reasons that weren't entirely selfish? Could you forgive someone who calculated your pain, but also your redemption? Share your thoughts. His clinical description made her stomach turn. Why? Why go to these lengths? Preston moved to a secured cabinet, entering a complex code. Inside lay a single tablet. He handed it to her with uncharacteristic hesitation. The treatment protocol appeared on the screen. Experimental, dangerous, ethically questionable. Not for her. For him. I'm dying, Preston said simply. The touch aversion is a symptom of neurological deterioration. Walter's protocol is the only potential cure. That's the real reason I married you. The tablet showed brain scans over time, progressive damage to neural pathways. Estimated prognosis, 6 months without intervention. The others couldn't handle the ethical complexity, couldn't separate professional requirements from emotional responses. Couldn't stay, she finished for him. They couldn't stay knowing you'd manipulated them. Yes, a single word containing admission and apology. The FBI's suspicions suddenly made terrible sense. They'd seen the pattern, but misunderstood the purpose. She had been trained to save lives, not to weigh one man's against her own freedom, especially when that man had calculated her value down to decimal points in a medical algorithm. Amara stared at the brain scans until the images blurred. The diagnosis was unmistakable: progressive neural degradation affecting the anterior cingulate cortex and amygdala, regions controlling emotional processing, pain response, and touch sensation. How long have you known? She asked, medical training taking over despite her anger. 3 years. Walter identified the condition during routine brain mapping. He developed the neural interface protocol specifically to address it. The lab's sterile white surfaces reflected blue light from monitoring screens. Preston moved with the careful precision of someone accustomed to hiding weakness. The touch aversion isn't psychological, he continued. It's neurological damage spreading to sensory processing regions. Each unwanted contact accelerates pain pathways. Amara reviewed the protocol details. Cutting-edge neural implants, experimental gene therapy, precision-targeted neural stimulation. Treatment that walked the razor's edge between breakthrough and malpractice. This is why the FBI is investigating you. Human trials without approval. They're investigating because Walter's research would revolutionize neurological treatment. Companies would lose billions in pharmaceutical profits. And the missing women, left after learning the full protocol requirements. Diana threatened to report us to medical authorities. She disappeared before our scheduled meeting with FDA representatives who were considering compassionate use approval. Amara placed the tablet on the counter, medical assessment warring with personal betrayal. You should have told me from the beginning. Would you have agreed to administer experimental treatment to a man who manipulated your career? The truth in his question settled like weight on her chest. I won't apologize for choosing to live, he said, voice steady despite his shaking hands. But I'm sorry for not giving you the choice to help. Morning light filtered through the lab skylights as Amara reviewed the treatment protocols. The science was sound but ethically complex. The risks enormous. The potential groundbreaking. I'll need complete access to all research data, she said finally. Unfiltered medical history. Full disclosure about previous attempts. Hope flickered across his face before caution tamped it down. You'll administer the treatment? One cycle. Then I walk away, with my license reinstated and immigration status secured. Agreed. If someone hurt you, but needed you to survive, could you separate your feelings from your ethics? What do we truly owe people who have wronged us? I want to hear your perspective. 3 days later, they prepared for the first treatment. The procedure room gleamed with technology that made hospital equipment look primitive by comparison. Preston lay on the treatment platform, electrodes mapping his neural activity, fear carefully controlled, but visible in the tension around his eyes. The neural stimulation will be painful, Amara warned, preparing the injection. Your brain will fight the remapping proc. The simple statement shouldn't have affected her. This was clinical, professional, the final transaction in their contract. Her decision was made. She would help him through one treatment cycle, then walk away forever. But as the first injection entered his system, his body convulsed violently, hand gripping hers with bruising force. Stay, he gasped through pain that stripped away pretense. Not as my nurse, not for the contract. Just stay. The monitors screamed warnings as his neural pathways lit up like lightning. His fingers remained locked around hers, the first touch he'd initiated since they met. She didn't pull away. Their marriage contract became front page, news the same morning his body accepted the first treatment. Headlines questioning his empire while Amara questioned her heart. Tech billionaire's marriage exposed. Immigration scheme or medical experiment. The San Francisco Chronicle headline glared from Preston's tablet as Amara monitored his vital signs. The first treatment had left him weakened but stable, neural scans showing tentative success. Someone had leaked details of their arrangement. Not everything, but enough. Photos of their quick ceremony. Documentation of her visa issues. Speculation about his health. How bad? Preston asked, voice rough from the treatment's aftereffects. Bad enough, she showed in the headlines. They know about our contract. They're digging into my background. Thompson will handle the press. This goes beyond press management. The FBI will use this to intensify their investigation. Preston struggled to sit up, determination overriding physical weakness. We continue the treatments. The protocol is working. My neural response improved 12% after just one session. And if federal agents show up with warrants, we invoke medical privacy laws. His phone rang constantly. Board members, investors, reporters. He answered none. For the first time since she'd known him, Preston Whitmore chose personal survival over his corporate empire. 3 days later, they ventured out for his follow-up scan at a private medical facility. Camera flashes ambushed them outside the medical center. reporters shouting questions that reduced their complicated truth to sensational headlines. Mr. Whitmore, did you buy your wife's green card? Ms. Adeyemi, are you being coerced? Is this marriage a fraud to secure the Kimball inheritance? For the first time, Preston reached for her hand publicly, not for appearance, but for anchor. When she didn't pull away, something shifted in his expression. Relief, perhaps, or wonder. A reporter shoved a microphone toward Mara. Were you aware of the previous women who disappeared after associations with Mr. Whitmore? Before Preston could speak, Amara stepped forward. You think this is about green cards and inheritance? This is about a man fighting to live and a woman who has every reason to walk away, but hasn't. The rest is noise. When does something that began as false become more authentic than relationships built on honest foundations? Have you ever found truth in something that started as pretense? Share your experience below. That night, returning to the mansion after dodging reporters for hours, exhaustion cracked their careful boundaries. Preston swayed on his feet, treatment after effects combining with the day's stress. Amara helped him to his room, territory previously off-limits. As she turned to leave, his fingers caught her wrist. Stay, he whispered. A request, not a demand. Their kiss wasn't planned or perfect. It was desperate and questioning, his inexperience evident in hesitation that somehow made it more powerful. I don't know how to do this, he admitted against her lips. Then let me show you, she answered, guiding his trembling hands where they'd never dared explore. Touch by careful touch, she rewrote his understanding of contact. Each caress deliberate, each response celebrated, his body learning that hands could heal instead of hurt. Morning light filtered through unfamiliar curtains when Amara's phone rang. Agent Daniels, voice urgent. Federal agents are en route to Whitmore's residence now. The previous subjects weren't his wives. They were test subjects who died during this exact experimental protocol. Get out of there, Ms. Adeyemi. You're in danger. The courtroom divided them physically, but something stronger than handcuffs bound them together. A truth more complex than guilt or innocence. Federal agents surrounded the mansion before dawn, arrest warrants in hand, faces grim with purpose. Preston surrendered without resistance, eyes finding Amara's across the chaos. Don't speak to them, he said quietly as they led him away. Call Thompson. Everything we discussed, he knows. For 6 days, Preston remained in federal custody while Amara worked with his attorneys. The charges seemed insurmountable. Unauthorized human experimentation, fraud, coercion, possible involvement in 4 women's disappearances. The FBI presented their case to the press. A tech billionaire experimenting on vulnerable women, using immigration status as leverage, discarding them when treatments failed. Amara faced her own decision. Testify against Preston in exchange for immunity or stand beside a man whose actions had upended her life. The night before the preliminary hearing, Thompson arrived with a secure tablet. From Preston. For your eyes only. The video showed Preston in his lab with Walter Kimball. Footage dated 3 years earlier. They discussed the neural interface protocol, ethical concerns, potential applications beyond Preston's condition. We'll follow every regulatory pathway, Walter insisted on screen. But we need backup plans if conventional channels fail. Your condition won't wait for FDA approval timelines. The final clip showed something the FBI didn't have. Walter introducing Preston to Diana Wilson, the last woman who disappeared. Our regulatory specialist, Walter called her. When we're ready for human trials, she'll navigate the approval process. Understanding clicked into place. Diana hadn't disappeared because treatments failed. She vanished because she knew details that would make the protocol worth billions. Justice appeared blind on courthouse walls, but Amara saw clearly now how fear and brilliance had collided in Preston's mind, how desperation had warped ethics until survival justified manipulation, how lonely his power had made him. If someone's actions were wrong, but their intentions were survival, does that change how we judge them? Is desperation ever a valid excuse for manipulation? Tell me where you draw that line. The preliminary hearing packed the courthouse with reporters and tech industry observers. Preston entered in handcuffs, thinner after a week in custody, but standing straight. Their eyes met briefly before he faced the judge. When Amara took the stand, the prosecutor approached confidently. "Ms. Adeyemi, please tell the court about your arrangement with Mr. Whitmore." She looked directly at Preston. "I agreed to marry him and administer experimental medical treatment for his neurological condition. Were you aware this treatment had been linked to the disappearance of 4 women? Those women weren't victims," Amara stated clearly. "They were collaborators in developing a protocol that could revolutionize neurological treatment. They disappeared because the technology they helped create is worth billions to pharmaceutical companies who'd lose markets if it succeeded." The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order. "Mr. Whitmore didn't disclose the full truth when he recruited me," she continued when silence returned. "That was wrong. But he's not responsible for those women's disappearances. He's a patient fighting to survive, and his treatment is working." The verdict came with conditions: house arrest, continued treatment under medical supervision, and full compensation to families of previous participants. As they left the courthouse, Preston turned to her with eyes stripped of pretense. "The contract is void. You're free to go." Her answer would determine if freedom meant walking away or choosing to stay. Freedom felt different when chosen rather than granted, when staying with a difficult man became her decision instead of his demand. "I'm staying," Amara told Preston as they rode home from the courthouse. "Not because of contracts or obligation. Because the treatment is working and because I want to see it through." He studied her face, searching for deception and finding none. "For how long?" "Until we've completed the protocol. After that, we renegotiate." The mansion felt different under house arrest. Federal monitoring equipment in every room, weekly check-ins with supervising agents, medical oversight committees reviewing all treatment data. Yet within these new constraints, something unexpected bloomed. Freedom. The pretense stripped away, they built something authentic from the ruins of their arrangement. The mansion transformed under her influence. Cold glass walls softened with color, sterile spaces warming with life. Technology serving connection rather than surveillance, as they created something neither had experienced: partnership. As the treatments progressed, Preston's neural pathways showed remarkable regeneration. The touch aversion receded gradually, replaced by increasing comfort with physical contact. Each small victory celebrated between them. Fingers interlaced during treatment recovery, his arm around her shoulders while reviewing scan results. Gentle kisses that no longer triggered pain responses. "I don't want your gratitude," she told him as his strength returned. "And I don't want your guilt. If I stay, it's because we build something real, something that would exist without contracts or conditions." He considered her words carefully, the engineer's mind that calculated everything, weighing possibilities. What would that look like? Equal partnership. Your resources, my medical knowledge. A foundation to make Walter's research accessible to patients who need it. What matters more in healing trauma? The professional protocols or human connection? Have you experienced the difference between clinical recovery and emotional healing? Share your journey below. 3 months into house arrest, they celebrated breakthrough results. Preston's latest scans showed neural regeneration beyond initial projections. His body remembered trauma, flinching instinctively before conscious choice overrode fear. "Focus on me," she whispered against his skin one night. "Not on ghosts." When his hands finally explored her without hesitation, both recognized the milestone meant more than physical pleasure. It was trust made tangible. The treatment protocol that brought them together transformed into the foundation that would define their future. Together, they developed plans to establish the Kimball Neurological Institute, research facilities designed to make neural regeneration therapy available beyond billion-dollar price tags. Complete remission appeared on his test results the same day her permanent residency was approved, no longer tied to marriage requirements. For the first time, they could choose each other without necessity driving their decisions. But that night, She discovered the hidden file he'd never meant her to find, a fail-safe plan if the treatment ultimately failed, with her name listed as his legal heir and genetic research subject. The final truth wasn't buried in legal contracts or medical files. It lived in the choice to stay when every logical reason said run. Amara confronted Preston in his lab, the contingency file displayed on screens between them. "Explain this." His face paled at the sight of the document. Genetic sequencing protocols, research parameters, tissue preservation methods. Her name throughout. "My backup plan," he admitted quietly. "If the neural interface protocol failed, you plan to use my genetic material for research? Without consent, I created the file before I knew you." Before, he gestured between them, words failing. It was desperate planning by a desperate man. Sunrise painted his recovery room in gold as monitors confirmed what seemed impossible months earlier. Cellular regeneration, system stability, life extending beyond its programmed expiration. Outside the window, Atlanta's skyline rose in the distance, her past and his future merging into their present. Amara studied the man before her. So different from the cold CEO who'd calculated her worth in a sterile office. The house arrest ankle monitor contrasted starkly against his expensive lounge pants. Humbled, but not broken. "You were right to plan for failure," she told him, the contingency files deleted before them. "But you were wrong to think I would ever treat another human being as an experiment. Even you." Preston moved to the window, dawn light highlighting the new ease in his movements. No more calculated steps to avoid accidental contact. No more flinching at proximity. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," he said simply. "This isn't about deserving. It's about choosing. Would you rather have a relationship born from perfect circumstances or one forged through impossible challenges? Is love more meaningful when it surprises us despite our intentions? Tell me which you believe creates stronger bonds." 6 months later, the federal monitoring equipment was removed. House arrest ended. The neural interface protocol received preliminary FDA approval for compassionate use trials. Their bodies spoke a language contracts never could. Each touch an affirmation, each response a promise. "I never thought I'd want this," he confessed, voice raw with wonder as barriers dissolved completely. To be seen, to be known. Her answer was both professional assessment and personal vow. Full recovery requires complete surrender. The Kimball Neurological Institute opened its doors in Atlanta, Amara's choice of location bringing their story full circle. Patients with conditions deemed untreatable found hope in protocols developed from Preston's case. Her nursing license, fully restored, hung beside his engineering degrees in their shared office. "We need to update our contract," Preston said one evening, placing a small box on the table between them. "I propose new terms." Inside lay not a ring, but a key to a clinic site in Lagos, Nigeria. "Your grandmother's neighborhood," he explained, "the next branch of the institute. The cold algorithms that once calculated her value have been rewritten by something calculations couldn't capture. Choice freely given, trust hard won, and futures deliberately intertwined. If this journey of control, trust, and healing resonated with you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories that explore what happens when contracts can't contain human connection. Let me know in the comments which moment changed everything for you. When Amara discovered the surveillance, when Preston revealed his condition, or when she chose to stay despite having every reason to leave.